All right, everyone, welcome. We are so glad to see your faces and people this morning. Once again, this morning, we're going to talk about the procedural safeguards and the eligibility categories. My name is Anna Zerfis, which most of you know by now after all of our time together. I'm from Stone Soup Group, and I'm the parent navigator for Fairbanks, as well as the statewide MAP Mentor Program Coordinator. My co-teacher today is Terry Manning from the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. She is the Special Education Development Coordinator, and I actually got that out without jumbling it, Terry.
Good job.
Yeah. So we are really glad to have you today. Okay. So what are procedural safeguards? You know that if you have a kid in special education, they have you sign that little box that says that they've given you the procedural safeguards. And it's usually a little booklet. In the Fairbanks area, it is currently what color, Terry?
Green.
Okay. So they changed the color of the booklet based on the edition, and currently the ones in Fairbanks are green. It's usually a booklet about a quarter of an inch thick, and it's pretty dense. So we're here to demystify it today. Procedural safeguards are basically the rights and responsibilities of children with disabilities and their parents, the rights and responsibilities of the school district, and it is understandable written notice in the parent's native language. Because we do have such a diverse populace in Alaska, that is very important.
And now, especially during COVID, a lot of times it is attached, the electronic version is attached to IEPs that are being electronically sent to parents. And there still may be a booklet sent when they're mailed out, if this school district happens to be mailing hard copies to parents. So there was a lot of information in that video, but there is also a lot of information in the procedural safeguards. And it really is to inform parents of what their rights are and what to do if you have a question or a concern, and a mechanism in which to try to get some remedy and get support to help mediate between you and the school district if need be. Of course, we're always hoping that there's a conversation happening between parents and the school district if there are concerns, so that it can be resolved. But we know that sometimes support is needed. So let's say that your child has been evaluated and you've gone to an eligibility meeting. You have a right as a parent to obtain what we call an independent educational evaluation, or you'll hear them say IEE. So what that is that you're requesting that you want more evaluation done in certain areas that the district has already done testing. Sometimes it could be that you're disagreeing with the results and you'll talk to the school district and they may have somebody within the school district test again, if that's okay with you. But if you say that you want somebody independent of the school district to do it, then you would get information from the school district about the process and where you would obtain that further evaluation and in what specific areas. So let's say that you have concerns about academic testing because your child was suspected of having a learning disability, then you would ask for an evaluation depending on which one you're concerned about, either the cognitive and or the academics. So you follow the school district's criteria in terms of who to contact. You contact that agency, and then there is a memorandum between the school district and the agency, and the school district pays for it. So let's say you disagree, but then you decide, I want somebody else to do the evaluation, and you're in Fairbanks and you get somebody in Anchorage, but you didn't go through the school district and the process as for setting it up, then there's a really good chance that that would not be covered by the school district. So you want to make sure, when I say the school district, it's any school district. You want to make sure that you're in conversation with the school district about who they have set up for further evaluations to happen. So also we're talking about transfer of rights. So at the age of majority, so when a student becomes 18 or legally emancipated, then they're their guardian. The parents are no longer, unless they have gotten legal paperwork to say that they are the guardian for the parent, they are no longer in charge of that student. Then at 17, the student and the parents get their transfer of right letter. And then the student could say they don't want their parent to go to attend the meetings with them. We've had that happen, but typically the parent would still come with the student to their meeting. There's some new legislation out, and it's new, so I can't give you all the details about if you've got a student who is severely impacted, there may be a process that does not have to be legal. So just watch for that. But for right now, it's if the student is 18, they're considered their own person, and the parents don't have guardianship. So when that transfer of rights happens, then the student is the one who becomes the decision maker. So keeping that in mind and planning for that is really important for parents. So confidentiality of information. So in the folders for your child, there's going to be personally identifiable information. And so you have the right to respect that. yes, to respect it, but actually inspect it whenever you would like. You would set that up with the school district, because it's personally identifiable, and we have FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Only certain people can access that. So you can do that. You can review the records. You can give consent for somebody else to review the records. And then you have the right to expect that once you ask for the ability to look at the records and to get support in interpretation and understanding what's going on, then it should be within a reasonable amount of time. So if you call on one day and you want to see the records, there may not be somebody available to do it, but usually within a couple of days, there's somebody available to sit down with you regarding that information.
I actually heard a speaker talking about FERPA, and she compared it to HIPAA, which is the Medical Privacy Act. So FERPA is the Educational Privacy Act. So if you think of it in that respect, not everybody can look at your kids' educational records, just like, not everybody can look at your medical records.
So you can request for copies also. That should never be a problem to get copies of your records. And then again, having somebody else look at it for you. And then you will also get a notice of destruction of information. So at 5 years after a student leaves a district, they can destroy records. So you would get a letter saying, in 45 days, we're looking at destroying these records. Would you like a copy of them? So if you get that letter, responding to that is important.
Especially if you want to keep them.
Yes.
So this video specifically talks about Utah, but in Alaska, you can file with the school district and/or the Department of Education.
In this USBE Instructables installment, you'll learn about dispute resolutions. We'll cover the key of communication and options parents have to find a resolution. Sometimes school staff and parents of students with disabilities disagree on services or what should be in a student's individualized education program, or IEP. Parents and school staff are members of the IEP team, and even though decisions are made by consensus or general agreement, the rest of the team may reach decisions that you do not agree with. In those situations, there are several steps you can take to resolve the disagreement. Let's walk through those steps. The first thing you should do is let your student's special education teacher or principal know about your concerns. This is the easiest and fastest way to resolve an issue. If you have an in-person conversation, follow up with an email, as this creates a record of the conversation. Make sure your messages are polite and factual, which is important for building and preserving a good working relationship with your student's school team. If direct contact with your school doesn't seem to work, contact your school or district special education director. If your concerns still have not been resolved, you may consider contacting the Utah State Board of Education Special Education Dispute Resolution Department. Specialists can help you understand the rights described in your procedural safeguards notice and the dispute resolution processes that are available to parents and schools. One of the services you can ask USBE to provide is an IEP facilitator for your next IEP meeting. This is helpful whenever you have specific concerns about your student's IEP, or when IEP team members disagree about IEP decisions. A facilitator is a trained neutral manager of the IEP meetings. That means that they are not on anyone's side. They are there to help you and the school staff come to a resolution. The facilitator will create an agenda that is agreeable to both sides, and they will ensure that all IEP team members get a chance to speak during the meeting. The facilitator guides the meeting and focuses on constructive conversation, collaboration, and problem solving. The structure and guidance a facilitator brings to the IEP meeting often helps parents and school staff come to an agreement. USBE provides facilitators at no cost to the parents or the school. Another option you can also ask for is mediation with the school. The mediator will help the parties identify their main concerns, brainstorm possible solutions, and reach compromise. Conversations during a mediation session are confidential. The goal of mediation is for the participants to sign a written agreement that resolves the dispute and describes actions both the school and family will take moving forward. Mediation is also provided by USBE at no cost to the parents or the school. If you believe the school has violated a requirement of the federal or state special education laws, you may file a formal written state complaint with USBE. Your complaint must explain how you think the school has violated your students' rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. You must also share facts to support your claims and suggest ways the school could resolve your concerns. USBE will investigate your complaint by reviewing your students' education records, other evidence you and the school provide, and talking to you and school staff. USBE will issue a written decision within 60 days. If USBE determines the school did not follow the law, it will order the school to complete certain actions to ensure the law is followed moving forward. These actions could include providing services that should have been provided but weren't, providing additional training to staff, or monitoring to make sure special education laws are being followed school-wide. Finally, you can request a due process hearing. A hearing is the most formal dispute resolution option. It is conducted by a hearing officer appointed by USBE, who considers the information from both sides and makes a decision about the dispute. At any point in the dispute resolution process, you can withdraw your complaint or hearing request if your concerns are resolved in another way. You can also participate in mediation after a state complaint or request for a due process hearing has been filed. You can seek information and general advocacy services from the Utah Parent Center. The Disability Law Center supports parents and students in accessing their special education rights. USBE is committed to helping teens resolve.
Okay, so looking at those options, which are really good options if schools and families can't come to agreement, when we're looking at the complaints and due process and the administrative complaint. Oh, did I jump ahead of you, Anna?
Nope, sorry, I went back.
So we're looking at, when we're looking at a complaint, anybody can file a complaint regarding something happening in a school district or regarding with special ed or regarding a specific student. So somebody could file a complaint with the department regarding your child and you not be involved with that complaint. So, and it's usually resolved within 60 calendar days. And we look at calendar days and school days. So it's counting the weekend. So it has to be resolved within those 60 days. But no, you need to know that only you or a school district can file for a due process hearing. And that's also within 45 calendar days, that's usually the decision is made, and then it's after a resolution period. So the hope is, even though a party files a due process hearing, that there can, through the resolution period and possibly mediation, be able to get things resolved and not have to move forward with that.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about IDEA procedures for discipline. And yes, the snarky teen in the video is pretty much universal.
Mrs. Johnson, this is Mrs. Betancourt, the principal from Anna's school. I'm calling to let you know that Anna was in a fight at school today. No one has been seriously hurt, but I'm going to have to suspend her. We need to meet and discuss this because it is required by law.
Oh, no. I'll be right there. How long is this suspension going to last, Mrs. Betancourt? Anna has already been suspended twice this year.
4 days.
Anna, what happened?
Mom, it wasn't my fault. Kids were making fun of me, so I stood up for myself.
Mrs. Betancourt, why does this keep happening? Kids are picking on Anna because she's in special education.
Anna, you can't keep having these fights in school.
But they started it.
Mrs. Johnson, this suspension will mean that Anna will be out of school on suspension for more than 10 days this school year. By law, we're required to hold a planning and placement team meeting to discuss Anna's individual education program. Because Anna will be out for a total of more than 10 days, that's considered a change in placement.
What does that mean?
It means that Anna's PPT has to determine the appropriate services to allow her to continue to learn the same things her classmates are learning.
What about the kids picking on her? They do it because she's in special ed. She shouldn't be suspended since they started it.
We do have to look into whether Anna's behavior was caused by her disability or if her behavior had a direct and substantial relationship to her disability. We also consider if her behavior was because the school failed to apply her IEP. This process is called a manifestation determination. We have to decide this within the next 10 school days. We'll do this at a PPT meeting.
What happens if we decide that Anna's disability didn't cause the behavior?
If that happens, she can be disciplined like any other child, but the school has to continue to provide services to her. These are all things we are required by law to do.
What happens if we decide Anna's behavior was caused by the school failing to apply her IEP?
Then Anna will not be suspended like other children. We may also consider calling a PPT to discuss Anna's services and consider whether we need to change them.
Thank you for giving me honest information.
You're welcome.
Then we're going to go on to private school placement. So we're going to talk specifically about when a parent chooses to send their child to a private school. And so you need to know that the school district is not required to pay for the cost of education if you choose to send your child to a private school. And that is especially because we're not required to pay for the special ed portion or any other portion. If the free appropriate education was made available to your child, you have the right to do that placement in a private school and facility, but private schools do not have to provide special education services. The school district that for wherever that private school is located does have the responsibility of providing services to a student who qualifies, even if they attend a private school. So your child could attend a private school, but then for services, go to their local school and receive services there. So we're not required to go to the school to provide services, but the student may receive those services at their local school. And so if you decide that you're going to place your child in a private school setting, and you feel like the school did not provide services when they should have, and it goes to a hearing officer, then the hearing officer could find that the there is reimbursement required because FAPE was not provided. That free appropriate public education was not provided. So then they may say that the school district would be required to provide some reimbursement. But just note too that there are limitations to the reimbursement, and if it happened to go that far, that information would be provided to you from the hearing officer.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about special education categories and find a little bit more about them and who uses them and what they entail. Eligibility in Alaska is that the child must experience a disability that meets one or more of the Alaska eligibility criteria. The child's educational performance must be adversely affected, and the child must need specially designed instruction and/or related services like OT or PT. We did talk about this a little bit in our last IEP session when we talked about whether or not a child with a disability will be found eligible for services if this child is not actually struggling. And that is something that's really important, is that not every child with a disability will be eligible. It all depends on whether or not they're being adversely affected in their education. So some of all of the special education categories, we have 13 categories. While their IDEA has 13 categories and Alaska has 14, and some differences in language. ECDD is the added one, and cognitive and visual have some different language. So a cognitive impairment is a kiddo with a disability that has a below average intellectual ability. They may also have poor communication, self-care, or social skills. One example of this would be Down syndrome. We have a specific learning disability. This is an umbrella term, covers a specific group of learning challenges. And some what could fall in this category would be dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia. SLD is the most common category under IDEA. In 2018, 34% of students who qualified did so under this category. Emotional disturbance. Various mental health issues can fall under the emotional disturbance category. They can include everything from anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, OCD, and depression. Some of these may also be covered under the other health impairment category. Deafness. Kids with a diagnosis of deafness fall under this category, and these are kids who can't hear most or all sounds, even with a hearing aid or assistive technology. Hearing impairment refers to a hearing loss not covered by the definition of deafness. So this type of loss can change over time. Being hard of hearing is not the same as having trouble with auditory or language processing. Deaf blindness is a diagnosis of kiddos who have both severe hearing and vision loss. Their communication and other needs are so unique that programs for just the deaf or blind can't meet them. An orthopedic impairment is when kids lack function or ability in their bodies. An example of this would be cerebral palsy. Then we have visual impairment, including blindness. This is a child who has eyesight problems and is considered to have a visual impairment. This includes both partial sight and blindness. If eyewear can correct a vision problem, then it doesn't qualify, and that's a really important note. Speech or language impairment. This category covers the difficulties with speech or language. A common example would be stuttering. Other examples are trouble pronouncing words or making sounds with the voice. It also covers language problems that make it hard for kids to understand words or express themselves. Other health impairment is the umbrella term that covers conditions that limit a child's strength, energy, or alertness. One example is ADHD, which impacts attention and executive function. Multiple disabilities. You could have a child with multiple disabilities that has more than one of these conditions covered by IDEA. Having multiple issues creates educational needs that can't be met in a program designed for any one disability. Early childhood developmental delay is the added one in Alaska. It's for ages 3 to 8, and the kiddo would need to test at least 25% below age equivalency in at least one of 5 areas: cognitive, physical, speech and language, social, emotional, or adaptive functioning, which is self-help. And then we have one of the main ones, especially that I've seen here in Alaska, is autism spectrum disorder. It is a developmental disability on a spectrum. It covers a wide range of symptoms, but it mainly affects a child's social and communication skills. It can also impact behavior. Another one that's really important, especially now as we start talking about sports injuries, is traumatic brain injury. More people are coming to understand that concussions, even simple ones, can have dramatic effects on people, as me and Terry can both personally tell you. This is a brain injury caused by an accident or some kind of physical force. It is not one that you are born with. Does anybody have any questions about the eligibility categories?
So I do have a question for the group. Could you have, let's say that a student experiences autism, is it possible that the student would not meet eligibility criteria for IDEA within the school district and be seen as having a disability? Yes. So that's oftentimes where, thank you, Drew, that's oftentimes where you find that there can be concerns that parents have because their child may have a disability, a medical disability, or medical condition that expresses itself as a disability, and they feel like their child needs to have services at the school. But there's 2 prongs to it. So you have to have a disability or meet the criteria for a disability under IDEA and then need specially designed instruction. So a student could have autism and at that particular point in time not need specially designed instruction. A student could have ADHD but not meet the second part of that of needing specially designed instruction. So oftentimes that's where IEEs will come in, where a parent may want, for somebody else to do testing. Those were bad examples for the IEE. Looking at a learning disability would be where several parents have wanted further evaluation to determine whether or not the scores were correct and that the testing represented what their child's level of functioning is. When we're looking at learning disabilities, Anna was talking about dyslexia and dysgraphia, and we don't use those terms specifically. We use reading disability, math disability, writing disability. And just because a student has issues in those areas, it doesn't mean that they don't need support, but we have very specific criteria for students to become eligible for services. So as you're going into this with your child, knowing that, finding somebody to help you work through that, somebody like Stone Soup Group and Anna, being able to have that extra support is always, I feel, important. When you're going into a meeting and talking about things that are as emotional as this could be, I know when my parents are going into a doctor's appointment, I go and take notes because they can't always hear or remember what's being said. So having somebody with you, just letting the school know, is really important. So I would always encourage that. And it's not, I don't see that as adversarial. I see it as being supportive, and everybody needs support.
And another thing to remember is that some of these can change over time. So a kid who has autism could have early intervention and could have all these services as a kiddo, and then go into kindergarten and be at grade level and be doing good cognitively, to be doing good socially. And then by 5th grade, he's fallen behind again. So at that point, then there would be another evaluation to see if they would then qualify for the IEP, which they didn't mean for the past 5 years, you know. And that can also be applied to some of the other disabilities, especially traumatic brain injury, because traumatic brain injury symptoms can roll out over a period of time, and you won't know what they are until they come. So it could be, you know, in the beginning, you're just fine, but then over the course of 6 months, you start to exhibit symptoms that weren't seen before the head injury. So that's something to remember, is that even if your kiddo doesn't have an eligibility right now, it doesn't mean that they might not need it later and that you are stuck. It's not something that is static. It's very dynamic, shifting and changing depending on your child's needs.
Those of you who have children in receiving services, do you have any suggestions for the rest of the group on how to handle situations when you're in disagreement with the school district? It's a really emotional time. So it's always nice to have a toolkit of strategies on how to deal with others when you're not in agreement. So we had a couple of suggestions in one of the videos about you're definitely having an email to be able to have your written trail. You want to have your written trail, but then what should go in that email about them being polite and being factual. And you should, as a parent, expect that from the school district also in communications, that it's, yes, an emotional time, but everybody deserves the respect that they should receive.
And one other thing that Stone Soup Group offers is that we do have a resources page on our website, and it actually has like tip sheets and template letters to discuss things with the school district, so that you don't have to come up with language all by yourself. We have also included in this presentation a page of resources, and this will be going out as a slide deck, so you'll have access to all these resources. And then we will include some more slides on the due process and administrative hearing pages as well, so you have a little bit more information about that as well. And if you are in need of anything, we also have a special education handbook that Stone Soup Group has condensed down from the big, huge law. And so it can be very helpful, especially when it comes to the acronyms, as special education is very full of, as we all know. I do actually have kind of a dictionary of acronyms. So if any of you are interested, you can always let me know and I can send that to you. That can be very helpful when dealing with all of the educational and disability world. So if you have any questions, please let us know now.
Hey, Anna, Drew put in the chat that she's not had a disagreement with the school district, but always maintained positive communication with her son's case managers. And I think even though we're talking procedural safeguards, that we cannot stress enough that is the key, is that positive communication between family and schools, because really everybody's purpose is to make sure that the child gets their needs met. And so being able to maintain the relationship between the adults so that the students' needs can be met is really important. So thank you, Drew, for bringing that up.
I have a comment. So my kids have been out of the school district for a very long time. They're both in their early 30s. But I definitely had some disagreements along the way. And one of the things that for both of them, and so one of the things that I learned pretty quickly was I became pretty good friends with, and I don't know if they have them nowadays, but it was the autism expert for the school district back in the day. And this person would oversee several different schools. And so that was kind of my go-to person on any concerns I may have. And she kind of helped, give me the lay of the land, if you will, on the different choices or what I could do, what my choice, versus going and digging into the books and figuring out what I need to do, what my rights were,
Does that sound
what
like
my child's rights were. And so that helped me just like tremendously.
Does that sound like the ABLE program?
No, I think what Kim's describing would be our coordinators possibly, and who may connect with for services with our ABLE program. But I think that sounds like a coordinator in our district that can help explain things. And oftentimes,
I would often have that person, excuse me, I'd often have that person at my IEP meetings as well. And so she was just, that person was just a godsend, and helped me through a lot of different questions that I had throughout the, from kindergarten to the ASAC program.
She was able to help as that translator.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Drew added that it's not always easy to stay positive, but it's been so important. And absolutely, in finding your resources. And Kim, it sounds like your autism person helped with that, being the resource to be able to support you as you were going through this, to be able to be positive. And just because we have a disagreement doesn't mean that we can't be positive, right? I mean, it's really how we're all talking to each other, and finding the support is so important when talking to teachers. If they're working with a challenging situation, we encourage them to get support too, and from their coordinators if they need it, or somebody else within the district who can provide that, because it's challenging on both sides to when you're trying to work through the law and the kiddo. So, and the needs of the kiddo and all of that. So if we start there and get those supports, the hope is that we don't have to go to due process, and that we can work together to meet the needs of the child.
Yeah, unfortunately, we never had to go through the due process, but we did run into some issues in middle school. And so, that clip reminded me of it when the girl was getting into a fight, and there was some problems we ran that were similar to that, where my son was being teased, and it caused some problems all around, so, but the whole team came together and looked at the situation and, what we could do, because he kept, at that point, they kept just suspending him to me, it looked like an easy fix for them. And it kind of was for them, but we managed to resolve the situation. Versus, suspending him all the time.
Right. Right.
But yeah, middle school and high school is hard.
Middle school especially. I really voiced the middle school. Middle school is difficult.
I think it's hard anyway for anybody, but you throw special needs in there and oh, good Lord, so if you have somebody kind of on your, if you're working, like Terry said, with the whole team and trying to resolve what it is that's going on and, take the appropriate actions, Yeah.
Thank you for sharing both Kim and Drew, the strategies, because it is important. And again, I can't reiterate enough, support, because just kids in general, if you just have kids in general, like you were saying, Kim, but then you add other challenges, that it can add another layer for sure. Something in the chat where she says, I think it's been easier over the years because we are still continuing the plan. And that is so true. And it's nice when you can have that continuation and everybody's on the same page and feels comfortable making those tweaks as needed. to as the child grows. Definitely the needs, they still have their needs, but they, I think, are a little unique to each grade level, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, or when they're in their 18 to 22-year-old program, for sure.
Okay, everyone, take care and stay warm.